Federline wrote a book, which is obviously heartbreaking to the book community because he's, I don't know, I guess like besmirched your name. Anyone who's ever written a book, he just opened a mud bucket in the nice neighborhood.
Okay, well, I just rated it 1 star.
Hell yeah.
Because otherwise there's no rating. So I'll get him eventually. So this book is an explainer about what it was like to be married and co-parenting with Britney Spears. And I have to say, it's exactly
nobody need that explained.
I want to disclaim something up top.
Okay.
I feel I very rarely call ableism, like throw a flag on the play. I feel with the conversations around Britney Spears and her mental health, I'm like, it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, I feel like the way the other people are like, she's perfectly stable and she should be president, or she's mentally unwell and like can't control her own finances and should be locked up in a goon chokey. Like, I am like, there is a middle, like, you are allowed to be mentally ill. You are allowed to be traumatized. You are allowed to make bad financial decisions with your own fucking money. That if you can work hard enough to earn millions of dollars, you get to blow it on a poker game or on strippers if you want. And she's not doing any of that.
Yeah, I guess I feel very stressed. This book was a lot more upsetting than I realized it was going to be. It put me in a pretty bad mood. I guess I feel very sad about the fundamental misunderstanding around mental health within the Spears community. I think that there is like a real...
When you say Spears community, do you mean her family or the extended the Britney
I guess
fans?
All of it, but especially in her immediate family. I think with her sister and her ex-husband, I think there's a true lack of understanding about, well, we've all been through hard things. Why can't you just deal with it? She is not well, and I agree with you. That doesn't mean that she can't be in control of her life. Like, I don't think that that's fair to say she's either perfect or she needs to be locked up. But I also think the way that they genuinely don't understand that she is, it seems like not a particularly mentally well person, and that means that she is processing things differently than the way you would have processed it. Like,
and that she needs extra. I mean, the amount of times he comes to the conclusion of like, something is seriously wrong here.
So why can't she just take responsibility for it?
Yeah, like at one point he has some line like, but unfortunately, she's pushed away everyone who could help her, like her assistants and her agents. And I'm like, well, then stand up and fucking, like, these are not actually her family. Anyway, so let's get into it. So basically, I will give him credit. He does not think anybody gives a fuck about him. He cuts to the chase real quick.
And yet, that's actually something that I feel is very at odds in this book, is his awareness of how little people give a shit about him. But also he's like indignant about the fact that they don't, and also somewhat in denial of the fact that they don't. He feels that he deserves to tell his side of the story. He's like kind of in denial of the fact that it doesn't really matter.
He does rip through his childhood. I mean, literally, I'm on paragraph 4 of the book. By 19, I'd been through a lot. That's a funny way to go through it. Anyway, but I guess he was always a dancer. He never like formally took classes, but he was part of a dance crew. After getting mixed up in some drugs and stuff as a teenager briefly, he got back involved and he was inspired to move down to LA. He does what all memoirists do, which is talk about like the ages and the eras and the seasons of rejection and trial and error and learning and adapting. And then he goes on to say, within 2 weeks of moving to LA, I had an agent. It begs the question, how much rejection is that? And it does seem like, I guess he was quite a captivating dancer because he had a lot of success right away. He went on tour with LFO, which is actually the first time he met Britney, but she says at the time,
they didn't really interact because he was touring with the opener and she was the headliner. So there just wasn't a lot of backup dancer of the opener and main headliner interaction.
He went on tour with Pink, which pissed me off because he really goes out of his way to talk about like what a level-headed, incredible performer Pink was and what a star and how she was so professional and she was 18, but she showed such leadership. Didn't you feel like it was kind of a dig at Britney to like make a big to-do about this teenager who was clearly so like tapped in? So he did that. He like got to do a Michael Jackson music video.
He had some major gigs. He had some major success. He was able to get his own apartment. He started dating Char Jackson, who had been on Moesha. And they, it seems pretty quickly, had their first child together.
Yeah. Char actually had 2 other children who were 5 and 7. She was living with her family and he was living in LA. Then before our first daughter was born, Char had a miscarriage. That loss hit me hard more than I realized at the time. I felt ready to have a kid. He's 24 at this point.
So then they do have their first kid, and that relationship was hard because her family was extremely around. They moved in together, and she had parents and siblings and just like a large extended family that was constantly in their orbit. And he goes, I was 24, a new father. I wasn't ready for this whole like family era.
Mm-hmm.
And this is very important later, that he had a hard time living with such a large family.
Which is crazy, because then why have a kid? It turns out very quickly that actually they aren't meant for each other and they're fighting a lot and they're unraveling. It wasn't like I hated being home. I loved being around my daughter. And Char's family was great, but it could get overwhelming, always having so many people around. So he'd go to Vegas for a couple of nights or hang out with the boys just to breathe.
Before he's going to Vegas with the boys and spending the nights with his friends so that he just has somewhere to breathe, he talks about how after he had a child, he didn't want to be away from them. So he put a stop to touring. So he said, I'm not going to be able to go on tour anymore because I have to be home with my child. I don't want to be on the road for like weeks or months at a time. And then immediately he's spending the night at his friends' houses and going to Vegas because he needs to get away. So he can't be away to make money. He can only be away to like gamble and hook up with other people.
Yeah. And then he goes, I was looking for a way out. Then we found out Char was pregnant again. Ultimately, I realized forcing it wasn't working. It wasn't fair to Char, to our kids, or to myself. I've always been a family-oriented person. Okay.
I think part of the reason things dragged on longer than they should have is because I've always been a passive person. I avoid confrontation whenever I can. I try to be mindful of other people's feelings. And because of that, I've stayed in relationships longer than I probably should have.
He was married by the time that other baby was born. To sit here and be like, I'm someone who sticks things out way past their expiration date. Like, I don't know. Once you get pregnant again, the clock starts. If you can't make it to the birth, then you really didn't try that hard.
I didn't want to hurt her, but deep down, I knew we just weren't right for each other. So he never tells her that. I don't think they ever
He just
broke
is
up.
like, quote unquote, leaving for LA to like look for work. And then he's like, yeah, it was more than that. I was just kind of like getting out of the house. So I guess he was just like disappearing for weeks at a time. Meanwhile, she's pregnant with his baby and then 2 other kids, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess I feel like if you don't want to be around someone's family all the time, you shouldn't have another baby with a woman who already has 2 kids.
My chapter with Char didn't end as expected, but I'm grateful for its lessons. I'm grateful for the family that was created. The way things ended with her forced me to confront some tough truths. This book reminded me a lot of Wilmer Valderrama's book, where he just kind of only says positive things about himself and just like excludes the whole story.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that
Very
if
you with the Louvre heist.
Yes.
Anyway, just a couple guys with a dream. Wishing them best of luck. We try and we fail, and sometimes we grow and we learn.
Exactly. Nobody gets hurt along the way. At least I didn't mean for that to happen. And if it did, I'm truly sorry.
So I never found out.
My deepest sympathies to anyone who was expecting to see those jewels at the museum. I didn't mean to hurt you, but sometimes we don't always think about other people's perspectives, and it's a lesson I've learned to this day. That was last Wednesday.
So he goes out in one of these nights out in LA with the boys, and he hears that Britney's going to be there. He kind of doesn't believe it. He shows up, and he says they just like lock eyes and it's on. Britney had this presence about her. She was confident but not intimidating, engaging without trying too hard. We talked for a little while and then hit the dance floor. Nothing too wild, just a little playful back and forth. Honestly, at the time in my 25-year-old mind, I was just thinking about smashing that. But she had this way of making you feel at ease. Like you didn't have to put on a front or keep up your guard. I felt like I could be myself.
So at this point, he has a child and a pregnant girlfriend, and he is at the club with his boys. He and Britney go home together. She has an after party at her place.
No, she doesn't. And I think that this is important because it's something that I'm really interested about by celebrity LA life.
Mm-hmm.
They go back to the Beverly Hills Hotel where she has a bungalow.
Sorry.
I mean, the amount of times they're like just at a hotel in LA.
Yeah.
I am very curious about that subculture of celebrity where you're just like staying at a hotel a mile from your home.
Because you don't want to clean up after having all these people over.
Sure.
Anyway, so she's got a bungalow at the hotel, and they just hole away there for days.
Yeah, she's like, we had sex that night. I thought it was going to be a one-night stand, but then we just like ended up being there. Finally, he goes, I'm drawn to the fact that she was independent with her own life, her own strength. She was her own person, confident. That was a big deal for me. Imagine being like, I like that this woman had her own life. Your girlfriend's home because she's pregnant. Oh, do you hate the way that your girlfriend is currently being anchored down by the breastfeeding infant you gave her? Like, anyway.
Britney was so independent.
Not like that woman I knocked up twice. She was always busy. Anyway, so they go out for the first time, and he is like, you actually cannot imagine what it was like dealing with the paparazzi. It was another world. Like, he had been in LA. He kind of ran in a crew, but he's like, it was hard to believe what was going on. There was just like hordes of them. You were never alone. And he does say with Britney, it was just like super high-paced life that I do think this is one of the more honest descriptions of what it is like to be sucked into the life of a celebrity. And he doesn't have the self-awareness to admit that that's kind of what was happening, but he does describe it. And I think it helps people understand why celebs get married so fast. Because I think when you're like jet setting and there's hundreds of people, when everybody is circling you and there's paparazzi and everything feels like this like intense moment, it feels like you've lived a lifetime together and it's been 4 weeks. Like, you know what I mean? I do like think it's interesting the way he was like, when you're with her, you're in this other world.
Yeah, and time moves differently in that world and everything exists differently in that world. But then you like step to the side for a second and realize you are still in the real world.
So then she demands that he goes on tour with her, which I understand because I think she was already like feeling overwhelmed. And so he goes on tour with her.
We'd spent days together before I went back to my apartment to grab clothes. Even then, she was already making calls to her team, telling them that I was going on tour with her.
Her insistence was overwhelming. I remember thinking, wow, this is a lot of pressure. But at the same time, I felt like I couldn't say no. We felt like we owed it to ourselves to see where this goes. I wonder what you owe the children.
That are yours. It's so funny that he would not go on tour to work, but he will go on tour with his girlfriend. I handled the breakup with Char poorly. I wasn't honest or direct. Before I left for Europe to meet up with Britney, I saw her and Corey, that's the child. I told her that I'd booked a commercial shooting overseas. I knew it would hurt her and I didn't want that. He lied. He just full out lied and said, I'm going overseas to shoot a commercial, not I'm going overseas with my new girlfriend. You're not my girlfriend anymore.
I wasn't the man I needed to be. I wasn't the man I wanted to be. And for that, I am truly sorry. I actually think it's a huge dishonesty for you to say you weren't the man you wanted to be. I think you wanted to be the man fucking Britney on tour, and you did live that life. The man you didn't want to be was the father and boyfriend of Char Jackson.
Because if you had wanted to be that man, you would have been.
You actually were technically that man. She was under the impression you were her boyfriend and baby daddy.
This is just like one of the more egregious things I think someone's done to a woman in one of these books we've read.
So then he's like, we were just so in our own world, and she appreciated that I didn't want something from her. The tour was all encompassing. And then he starts talking about how like the tour was his first red flag because 2 of her security guards, this guy Lonnie, who already knew him, said, can I talk to you for a minute? And he says, what are you doing? I told him the truth. I was unhappy that things were falling apart with Char. I met Britney. We connected. Lonnie is somebody who knew Char Jackson. And so you could tell he's like, what are you doing here when you have a baby and another one on the way at home with a girlfriend? And he's like, that was my red flag that Britney was no good. And I'm like, really? That wasn't your red flag that you were no good?
You were no good. So then the second red flag is he on tour, they're partying a lot, always out and about. And then he sees Britney making out with one of her girlfriends. And he gets very upset and he goes, I'm leaving. I didn't realize that it was that type of thing. And Britney begs him to stay and says, I'll never do it again. And he kind of takes this moment as Britney not realizing that he was serious about her.
Yeah.
It's just this really bizarre moment where he's like, because I was willing to walk away from it all, she realized I really loved her.
It also sets him up as this like real monogamous good guy. And meanwhile, he was literally just cheating on his girlfriend with her.
Literally.
This idea, he's like, that's not what I thought this was. I thought this was serious. Not like that other thing I had with my pregnant girlfriend. Anyway, so she asks him to marry her on a plane. He turns her down. She's kind of shocked. Later, he ends up proposing to her.
Right after she blows out her knee and they have a couple months of recovery.
Mm-hmm. They like get really close. So then they look for a diamond. This was the first thing where I was like, wait, this is crazy. The one she chose was dope, a 4.5 or 5 carat vintage diamond ring. It had that old world charm she loved and it became her first engagement ring. Romantic, unique, timeless. It hit exactly the vibe she was after, but as time passed, her taste shifted. The vintage ring, while beautiful, didn't feel right to her anymore and she decided she wanted something different. He got her a different ring, a 6.5 carat one, and he made the original one his own pinky ring. The rings, like our relationship, tell a story. From the simple beginning without a ring to the extravagant pieces that followed, they mark the moments in time, love, change, and motion, our journey together, everything unfolding faster than either of us could have ever imagined.
I mean, that just makes no sense.
First of all, to be like, her taste shifted over time. They were engaged for like 3.5 months. Second of all, to be like, so don't worry, that 5 carat diamond, I just kept it. Third of all, to be like, they marked the moments in a relationship from no. I don't think Britney ever thought she wasn't going to get a ring. And in fact, I don't know, just this whole thing is so preposterous. And for him to walk away, having essentially got himself a 5 carat diamond from his ex-fiance, I don't know, all of it is so funny.
While Britney and I were planning our wedding, my second child with Char was born. I remember the morning vividly. I mean, shut the fuck up. To pretend that you were there for that kid is so preposterous.
We got married in September, 5 months after we got engaged. 5 months. That was our lifestyle back then. Everything was moving a million miles an hour. He always says that was our lifestyle. He keeps being like, that was how we spent money. That was our deal. That was our lifestyle. That was our business. No, that was Britney's lifestyle. And you were like hanging on for dear life and lucky to be a part of it.
Okay, so then he brings in the fact that she was still hung up on Justin Timberlake. And the night before their wedding, he found her crying about Justin. I told her straight up, if you're not ready to do this, we don't have to. We don't need to get married. I'm happy with what we have. He really uses the first 75% of this book to paint him as this like understanding guy who just loved Britney and wanted her to have the world.
It's crazy how he can say like two completely opposite things back to back and see no hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
So then they get pregnant kind of right away. She ends up having a scheduled C-section September 14th because they knew they couldn't trust like a random hospital visit with all the paparazzi. They had to do it controlled, which really breaks my heart for her.
Yeah.
I felt that way about Pamela Anderson. It's really sad when even that is
stolen.
Yeah.
Before we got married, we signed our deal for the TV show Chaotic. So this is how he gets enough money to buy a house with her, essentially.
And can I say I'm very curious about the actual proportions?
Of course.
He gives me like, now I had some money. He kept acting like he sold a TV show and could contribute. It's not true at all. She got him a gig.
She got him a gig and then he could pay for part of her house. It was like giving him Monopoly money. Like she signed a deal and was like, here, these dollars are yours. What do you want to do with it? Chip in on the house that I'm buying you?
Yeah.
So Preston is born and then Britney pretty immediately gets pregnant again. Like 2.5 months later, she's pregnant again. They end up being born like 1 year and 2 days apart.
No less.
Oh,
like
2 days less than 1 year apart.
Yeah, which is crazy. It is crazy that for 2 days, like they're the exact same age.
So as now Britney is pregnant and mothering a newborn, he decides that this is a really good opportunity for him to explore career opportunities. And so he starts making music. So the entire time that she is pregnant with their second child and also parenting the newborn, he is recording his first album. Oh my God, this scene is crazy. He's talking about being in Vegas with his friends and the paparazzi staged a moment to make it look like he was staring at some stripper's boobs.
He goes, I was only at that strip club for like half an hour to set my friends up and then I was going home. And I'm like, yeah, totally.
And then this girl came out and the way I turned.
Get strippers to come to your house.
Okay, so here's something that I'd like to discuss actually. Let me put my book down for a moment. So his friends end up stealing this photographer's camera, the photographer that set him up, so that he didn't get exposed for looking at a stripper's boobs.
At a strip club.
At a strip club, the photo made it look like he was, quote unquote, staring right at her chest. What were these photos of?
Yeah, like what was actually that bad?
So I feel like he tells this story because I bet you there was a lawsuit about him stealing the camera, but we don't know what was on the camera because he stole it. I'm sorry, he's stealing a camera because the photo made it look like he was looking at a boob.
Because you forget what's important to them. Like maybe in his mind, something he had to explain for in this book was that lawsuit against him. And so this was his soft story. But to me, it's like not a story I remember at all. So it just is like a dumb story. But I think you're probably 100% right. Like the photo of him walking out of a strip club would have told the exact same story. So what was actually?
I'm sure it was either his face inside of a boob or his body inside of a woman. We know he's not a pornosexual.
It hadn't been invented yet.
Okay, so, he's going on and on about how intense the paparazzi were. And now he's, really trying to figure himself out as a musician. He's really proud of the work he put out there.
Fame didn't change me in the ways people might assume. Sure, it gave me confidence. And to some, maybe that confidence came across as cockiness. Confidence over cockiness has always been my mantra. But man, seeing some of that stuff now, I can understand how it came off. I look back to those days, maybe when the spotlight was a little too bright, blinding me. And now that I can see more clearly, I can't help but cringe a little. But I wasn't trying to be someone I wasn't. So then he goes into how he's always loved music and music is so much like dance. And that's why he had to do Popazao.
There's always that uphill battle to overcome the assumptions, to prove I wasn't the tabloid villain people expected. This made it really difficult to build my own brand.
Oh, he also says if he was somebody who only cared about attention, he would have never left Britney. Here he says, she may have been the one who would technically walked out, but I was already gone. I'm not saying it wasn't exhilarating being thrust into the limelight at 25. It was the ultimate rush, an adrenaline high, like nothing else. I felt like I was on top of the world, ready to conquer anything. Fame, in a way, was the most powerful drug I'd ever experienced. It was intoxicating, addictive, and dangerous. You feel invincible. Okay.
So back to his music career. She was supportive, or at least acted supportive, of me wanting to do music, act, and explore the entertainment industry. So this is his way of setting up the fact that Britney was like jealous and unsupportive. And the thing about it that he leaves out mostly, except for when he like literally can't not write in the timeline, is that Britney was pregnant and had a baby, a less than 1 year old baby at home. So
there's something almost abusive about not using protection and like getting these women pregnant like so quick postpartum. I really am like, I don't know. It's on you to make sure you do not get these women pregnant again. Like, stop getting women pregnant back to back to back to back.
I also just feel that for him to be pursuing, like, I'm sorry, the first time he's worked in 4 fucking years is like while she's pregnant and also has a baby.
Yeah, when he was with Char Jackson, he actually couldn't work because he had a baby. Now that he has 3 children under 4, suddenly he has to start a music career.
3 with 1 on the way.
Because his album launched 6 weeks after Jaden was born.
Exactly.
So one baby was 6 weeks old, one baby was 1 year old, one baby was 2 years old, the other baby was 3 years old.
So the entire
he has 4 children under 4.
The entire time that Britney was pregnant with the 4th child, his 4th child, is when he's decided that he needs a music career.
I also just have to say that this line that we skipped, because we skipped a section about his high school years that you don't give a fuck about. But he says, what kept me grounded amongst the pages of the world's tabloid press was my sense of self and my values.
The fuck is he talking about?
That's something I take pride in, even when the world is quick to tear you down.
So now he's putting out music. All I wanted to do was create and share and put my art into the world and have people hear it without thinking about whether or not it was truly ready. So this is his way of saying how hurt he was that his album got such shitty reviews. The thing is, it was truly bad. And I think another thing that he won't acknowledge at all is the way that his entire career exists off the back of Britney. Like,
okay, no, he says, it was humbling though. I thought people would embrace it because they knew who I was, but really they had no clue who I was. So which one, like, you know what I mean? He's like, I thought they would like it because I'm famous, but it turns out I'm not even really famous. This, I almost wanted to kill him. It takes way more than name recognition to succeed. I learned that the hard way.
Oh my God, this is the worst line in the book. Oh my God.
Britney's career was built by an unstoppable machine, a team of experts with endless resources and a clear vision. In the hip hop world, success isn't handed to you. It's earned. It's grassroots. You build an audience slowly, gaining respect and traction with every mixtape, every track. I didn't have that foundation.
I'm out of my fucking seat. Hold my crown jewels. I can't believe I want to beat the shit out of this motherfucker.
My first album was my introduction to the industry, but I never had the chance to grow into it. I went straight to the big leagues. Oh, unlike Britney, who worked since she was 7. Oh, Britney had the advantage where everything was handed to her because she worked for 10 years and then had a massive hit that was based directly on her vision and her talent and became like the most charismatic. I just can't. He thinks Britney's career was handed to her by an unstoppable machine, a team of experts with endless resources and a clear vision.
If her machine is so unstoppable, what's going on with Haley Steinfeld?
There's no clear vision there. So then he goes, the way things ended between me and Britney, it was abrupt, but there were signs, stuff I should have paid more attention to. Almost immediately after the album dropped, everything in my personal life unraveled. It dropped, by the way, Halloween 2006.
Yes.
So exactly 21 years ago.
So she's 6 weeks postpartum with her second child in 2 years.
Yeah.
He is having an album release party.
He goes, I was trying to juggle so much, too much maybe. I went on a 6-week promo tour for the album, but by the time I got back to LA, my focus had to shift. The music had to take a backseat to the stuff happening at home. Yeah. If you went on a 6-week tour that culminated in a party 6 weeks after his baby was born, does that mean the day after his second baby in 1 year was born, he left?
Yeah.
Like, kill him.
Kill him. So this is the problem that I think we get to with Britney Spears is that she is a broken person.
Yeah.
And then you look at why, and it's because of moments like this. Like, I know you can't blame someone for someone else's like mental health degrading, but there are factors. And I do think having 2 children in 1 year and then your husband leaves immediately.
And at the end of like a lifetime of being abused by everybody in power and using, like, I mean, she has been through so much. She's been abused by the public. She's been financially abused by her family. Like, I just think every man in her life has treated her like shit. And maybe she probably already had like mental illness to begin with. And now she's postpartum times 2. It's more than anyone can stand and being constantly criticized by the media. Her family is so cruel to her. And on top of that, her husband leaves. Like, yeah, I'd have a nervous breakdown too. So this begins the section of the book, which is like the rest of it, I guess, the next 50%, where he just starts naming every fucked up thing Britney has ever done. And that's why I think my up top warning was like important, because I believe what he's saying. He says some pretty damning things about Britney. And I'm like, yeah, I believe you. I believe that she struggles enormously with her mental health and was at times not a great mother to 2 little babies. And I believe she needed help. To step in and help her in a way that enriches everybody and takes her freedoms from her is not actually helpful. In this book, there's a lot of talk about how the Britney fans have actually gone after the boys. And I do think, listen, they didn't ask to be part of this. I understand feeling like, why won't you stand up for your mother? But you don't know their relationship. And I believe she is not a great mom. I believe that they've had a really hard time having a mentally unstable woman as a mother who's like
a mentally unstable and like globally famous.
Yeah,
mother.
I think it has been a hard situation. And I don't think it's their job as her children to have to be the bigger person. I think they get to be children and be like, I've been hurt. My needs come first before I like get on Instagram as an underage person and support my mom. I kind of understand from that perspective why Kevin's like, actually, I will say very quickly, I went, okay, shut the fuck up. Like the way it is so piley on. And I'm like, what do you fucking want? What, like you made your point 100 times now. This is just some like airing of the dirty laundry to make us hate her. It is such an obvious attack to make everybody hate her, to punish anybody who's ever supported her. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. She's mentally unwell. Help her. Somebody step in and help her and stop.
And that's the thing is, I'm like, what do you want? You won. For 14 years, she was a prisoner of her life. Like, what do you won. You did it. You made it so that she had no autonomy for an extremely long time. What now? Like, you did it. She was in a fucking conservatorship.
And I am just like, how badly do you need the public opinion to like penalize her? You will never be vindicated. People don't like you. You've made your point, and now it's 60 more pages of just like bashing her.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I believe it's true. But I also think his perspective is so hateful. And like, we'll get into it, but like the way he'll be like, so because she did XYZ, which I will say, I believe she did the things he accuses her, he'll go, that's why Jamie had to step in as her conservator. Anyway, the next month, I got a restraining order against him because my children weren't safe around her, but he did a great job. I'm like, how could a man that you don't think is safe to be around your children be a good conservator of? That's the crazy thing. Is nobody's able to have the bigger picture and see that the systems in place are hurting her and not helping her, and then they can't understand why she won't get better.
And that's the thing that I was saying at the very beginning of this about Kevin and Jamie Lynn Spears, is that they have this true lack of understanding about mental illness.
It's that they have such a different standard for her.
Yes.
And that's what Jamie Lynn had too. She goes, well, I had to stop speaking to my father because he was so abusive and mean to me when I was in time of trauma.
But why couldn't Britney just accept his control?
Yeah. Looking back in the way my father treated me was really fucked up. But, you know, they did what they had to when it came to Britney.
Exactly.
Yeah, for Kevin to say, you know, of course I was doing cocaine, but it was different when Britney did cocaine. That doesn't mean I wasn't a bad dad. Of course, Jamie Lynn was great to Britney. I didn't think he should legally be around my children.
He talks about the way she was still doing world tours while under this conservatorship. And he would say, you know, Jamie let her do a tour when she wanted to, and then said, well, once the contracts are signed, you have to follow through with it. What do you mean this person, you believe she still has control of her life, but she's being held to this insane standard where she can still, like, the decisions she's allowed to make are the ones that are going to net $100 million for the family?
You know what enraged me?
What?
Is when he goes, so I had to explain to the boys that the way her conservatorship is set up is that whenever she wants out, all she has to do is petition them and tell them that she's mentally well enough. So the fact that she isn't out means that she hasn't asked, she doesn't want to be, or she isn't well enough, because all she has to do is say, I'm better now, and prove she's better and she could get out. She is literally the first person in the history of America to be let out of a conservatorship. It's so provably false that that's how it works. Okay, should we get back to the book? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
So he goes to this opening party. She's there.
Initially, she had said, I'm not going to come to your launch party because I have to stay home with the kids. He gets there and she's there doing drugs. And he's freaking out because he says she would drink and do drugs and then breastfeed our children. And I didn't want her to be allowed to breastfeed.
And he's like, I tried to understand where she was coming from. It's been really hard to go from being uber famous to having none of that by being a mom at home. And I'm like, also, like, literally,
you're gone. It's hard to go from being uber famous to now having 2 children, and also you left. Like,
and
you're
then
gone.
He starts complaining that like his family never got to stay over, that nobody really stayed at the house. It was just sometimes her mom, sometimes her family. But he goes, slowly I started to realize how much of myself I was pushing aside just to keep the peace. The only time I saw my boys, my closest friends, was when she was out of town or I could sneak away for a few hours. Okay, didn't you just do a 6-week press tour when your newborn baby was...
Weren't you in Vegas with the boys destroying a camera because they got a picture of you looking at a boob?
Maybe your parents weren't allowed to sleep over because you were in New York on TRL when she was home with 2 people.
Can I say, the other thing is, with the Char chapter, he's talking about how annoying it was that there were so many people around. And now with the Britney chapter, he's talking about how she didn't let any people around.
Yeah, there's always the problem. So he actually gets a music studio at their house. He's always there smoking weed. One time she comes over when she's like pregnant with the baby on her hip, and their security guard had brought him weed. And so she slapped him. And he was like, that was a turning point. That was so crazy. She hit me with our baby. He kept saying, everybody knew I smoked weed. I'd even smoked with her a couple times. Not when she was pregnant, but like, you know, I wasn't lying about smoking weed. I never lied, never changed. She married me knowing exactly who I was. Okay, you're actually supposed to change when you become a father. You're actually supposed to stop doing stuff that you did as a single man when you become a married father.
In his defense, he was already a father.
Yeah, she didn't know that. Maybe it had nothing to do with me at all. Maybe it was the pressure, the postpartum, the pregnancy, the weight of everything crashing down at once. I don't know. What I do know is this: something broke that day and we were never the same after. How about instead of being like, I don't know what was going on with her, your pregnant wife, your pregnant postpartum wife
is looking for you and you're smoking weed in the studio.
And you're like, it didn't feel personal. I mean, listen, it was all those things, but it's actually your job to find out what's going on with her and make it better.
Okay, so it's his release party. She's there. She's doing drugs. He freaks out because he doesn't want her to go home and breastfeed the babies with like drunk milk.
Yeah.
So he calls her mom and says, don't let her breastfeed when she gets home. It was supposed to be my night, and instead it turned out a disaster. Dude, your wife is fucking 6 weeks postpartum with her second child in 2 years. Like, it wasn't supposed to be your night. You actually shouldn't have had a night. It should have been your night like 3 years from now. Like, you guys both should have shut the fuck up for a minute.
And he starts being like, yeah, she was crazy. She had fired so many people at this point. She didn't trust anyone.
Yeah, why would she trust anyone? She can't trust you.
What shook me the most was realizing how fragile everything was. If she could make a choice like that, breastfeeding our boys while high, what else was she capable of? And how many times had it happened before? He says breastfeeding a lot, and it really like pisses me off. I go, shut the fuck up. I go, okay, then go home and give them formula. Go home. Go home and feed them the way you think they should be fed.
Yeah, so he leaves. He goes on tour, and while he's on tour, she files for divorce.
And it's so funny because then he's like, I was so upset. I was so caught off guard. But in this very book, he goes, I was already gone. Yeah. She was told to file first. He had said he was going to file. Like, it was just like this whole thing of everything she does is wrong.
In that single week, I went from trying to fix my marriage to scrambling to figure out how to protect myself in a divorce. And yeah, it hurt like hell. I mean, why are you in Toronto doing an interview for your new album if you're trying to fix your marriage?
And then he's going, all I was thinking about was how to stay in my boys' lives. What about those other kids you already had? What about right now when you're in Canada at Much Music? Yeah, I was angry. I was furious about the way it all went down. Furious that Britney didn't even think about how it would affect me. That I wanted to hold my boys, but I couldn't. Not yet. I still had commitments to fill, and she had our sons and wasn't going to let me. Dude, why did you have commitments?
Take time off. Beneath the surface, I was a wreck. I felt lost and betrayed.
So he's always like, every time I call, I could hear my babies crying in the background, and I'm just so motivated by protecting my babies.
And then Britney was partying with like Paris and Lindsay Lohan, and they would call him and he would hear the babies crying.
And he goes, can you believe she would do that? He goes, at the same time, I was unraveling. No matter what, I was going to fight for the kids. The divorce, the fight for the kids, the media scrutiny, it was eating me alive. I started going out more, drinking more, slipping up and doing coke now and then. Anything to drown out the chaff and the escape, the weight crushing me. But no matter how dark things got, I kept pushing. And then he's like, can you believe Britney was going out and partying during these days? Anyway, I was going out and partying because everything was so hard. For you, nobody gives a fuck about you. It was way worse for her. Listen, I don't think it's good to do cocaine and then breastfeed your children.
I don't think you should do that.
But I also think the fact that he's like, I had to party to kick off steam because my stupid bitch pregnant wife was at home collapsing, and that puts a lot of pressure on a man.
So the problem is that I do believe his behavior broke Britney. Like, obviously she couldn't trust anyone. She thought that maybe she could trust him, and she was dead wrong for that. I think she was just like looking for someone that was enough of a loser that they would give up their life for her, and she was so close.
Well, can I say, I think beyond him, I think the hormonal influx of having two children back to back like that, I think he says she was already on a lot of mood stablers. I think she probably does struggle with like a mental illness. Like, I do think all of it came together. I think she did kind of get married and have those babies as a way out. It only made everything worse. And then he abandoned her and she just like fucking fell apart. But what exactly? Yes. I don't think it was him alone.
No, I don't think it was him alone. I think he was a factor that caused her to have a true mental breakdown.
Well, I think the mental breakdown would have happened, but had he stayed by her, we could have gotten her help and she could have come out relatively unscathed.
What I'm saying is I think that his actions caused a true mental breakdown. I think everyone in her life has such a lack of understanding around mental health that they view erratic behavior as like something that she can just fix.
Yeah,
and
something
I think
to be punished.
Because everyone was surrounding her saying like, you are doing this, you are doing this. Like, I think it created this like further and further tumble into.
Yeah.
I think eventually she hit a point that she could not climb out of. And to this day has
not been able to.
Had these like lasting repercussions because around her, everyone is saying, you did this, you did this, you did this to yourself. They have this belief that he's written, that Jamie Lynn has written. They won't stop saying that all of these consequences are results of her own actions, which they just aren't. She is being so disproportionately punished for things that she can't control. And then also there are things she can control. I think
she was in this moment of crisis, and what she needed was her husband to help her get through it. But instead he abandoned her, which exasperated it. And then on top of that, all of these evil vultures who happen to be her own family and then also her own managed team swooped in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so like then they try to do a rehab with her and he's like, I showed up. I said, don't worry, I'm not taking the boys from you. Like, I love you. Like, tell me when you see them. We'll make it happen. And I guess the next day she showed up like desperate for her children back. And he's like, she's so crazy. And that's the night that she famously like drove to the barbershop and shaved her head. He goes, do you see what I was dealing with? And I'm like, do you see what she was dealing? That's what's so crazy. He goes, looking at those photos, I can't believe what I had to put up with. And not like looking back at those photos, I can't believe nobody showed her compassion. And instead, everybody was treating her like an evil person.
I can't believe that he saw those photos after she had been at his house begging to see her children, and he doesn't have just like an enormous pit of guilt that he let her back out into the world that night.
Yeah, and I understand. Listen, and I'm even going to say I'll understand being like, you're clearly not in a place to be with the children right now, but let her into your home.
Like she needs to be somewhere. She can't be driving a car around Los Angeles.
Your legal wife, and she's not just driving by herself, she's being chased by paparazzi who are desperate to watch her become insane. He talks about his own experience with paparazzi and the way that it can make anybody like a raging bull because they like try to get the worst out of you. It's so crazy that nobody was a safe harbor for her.
Yeah. I mean, she had nowhere to go. Her dad was evil. Her mom was spineless. Her sister was young. Her husband was evil. Like, who did she have?
So then that happened, and then he's like, you know, they 51-50'd her twice that year. There was that incident where she was holding Jaden. And listen, I understand that the children cannot be pawns. I'm not going to sit here and be like, let Britney have her babies, even if she's in the middle of like a mental health crisis. But for him, even 20 years later, to look back and feel bad that clearly she's not getting the help she needed. Because with Who's with Tabs, hold on a second, we're talking about Britney Spears. We did the timeline. And so she had that rehab thing where she broke out, tried to see her kids, shaved her head, was 51-50'd. And then 3 weeks later, shot an episode of How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
This idea that all these people only cared to help her, all these people only cared to get her money making again.
I mean, that August is when
Blackout
she
came
did,
out, right?
Yeah, and she did the VMAs performance where everyone was like, wait, is she still not good? And it's like, yeah, I guess she's still not good. 6 months ago, she shaved her head.
And that's what's so fucked up is that he was being like, she was so crazy. Why didn't anybody help her then? They weren't helping her. Stop making her work. So then she gets put in a psychiatric hold. The last thing I wanted to do was to tear her down, to point out every mistake, every flaw, every incident, but I had to. I was fighting for my children. Okay, that's your court excuse. What's this book excuse? Because this book is really just like listing every fucked up thing he can remember she ever did. And I believe she was acting unwell. Like he said, she kept showing up to the courthouse, and at one point she showed up in her wedding dress. And I'm like
she would show up late. She would show up erratically.
I'm not going to sit here and say it's a good look to show up in a wedding dress fighting for custody of your children. But at the same time, I don't know what good we're doing talking about it now. I don't know why you can't look back and go, if this is 51-50 holds later, then clearly the help they think they're giving her is not working. Who has their best interest at heart?
Okay, so then he talks about how he starts partying on the weekends. I was young, newly single, and living a lifestyle that pulled me into a whirlwind of partying. Balancing these two worlds was challenging, to say the least.
So then he goes on to do multiple chapters about all the crazy parties he got to go to and all of the Scott Storch mountains of cocaine. And he got to do a Super Bowl commercial, and he got to party with Snoop Dogg, and he was doing drugs. He was partying. He was dancing. He was working. Meanwhile, he's like, can you believe that fucking crazy Britney? Anyway.
And he really paints these as if they were accomplishments in his own career and not just like, what do you call it, shrapnel from the Britney machine.
He asked his lawyer if it's okay to smoke weed with Snoop Dogg. And he goes, Kevin, as your attorney, if you get the opportunity to smoke with Snoop Dogg, you don't, then you're a fucking idiot. Coolest lawyer on the planet. Meanwhile, Britney's like in a padded cell being told, yeah, you can leave if you do a Vegas residency. Otherwise, get back in. Like, it is so unfair.
Mm-hmm.
He does a couple chapters about getting to do the WOE. What made it all so surreal was that I was doing some of the greatest shit in my life while dealing with the worst, hitting the highest highs while living my lowest lows.
And he really doesn't understand why in the WWE, like all these situations, he has to first enter as a villain and then he can like maybe try to win people over. And it's like, bro, you are a villain. You just are. You are an evil, evil person who is a self-centered, hapless loser.
So then the divorce goes through and he talks about he gets $20,000 for child support. And then he got $20,000 a month in alimony for half the marriage. So like
a year.
So not that much. So mostly he was getting $20,000 a month.
And he goes, it actually doesn't go that far when you're trying to keep up appearances in LA.
And of course not. Like I will say, of course not. But that's why you have to get a job. Because he's like, when you think about the fact that I had 4 children. And I was like, well, yeah, get a job and support the other 2.
Get a job. Also,
I do believe that he needed full-time security for those kids.
Oh, me too. But I also don't think he needed to, I mean, when he's talking about the house in Tarzana where he was living when he met Vic, his current wife, he's talking about the fucking like swim up bar. I do believe he needed full-time security. I don't believe he needed a house on a golf course like that.
It's also like, yeah, okay, get it, then go work, bitch.
Go work, do something. He's also at that point getting $100K for club appearances.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the math because he says, I was getting $100K for club appearances. I made $500,000 to be on The Biggest Loser. At my height, I was making $300,000 to $500,000 per year. And I go, okay, well, I just added up. What?
Yeah.
So you were getting $100,000 for club appearances and you did 3?
I don't know, man. And then he also says he thought it would last forever, which that's obviously stupid.
Britney had her own unique perspective on things. She saw the events in her life through a prism that painted her as the victim, the misunderstood one, the person wronged by everyone around her. From where I stood, she needed help. Whether that was rehab or therapy, I couldn't say for sure.
Both. It was both.
Whatever the case, it was clear that she was in no state to responsibly manage her own affairs. She needed some form of oversight. So this is where he goes in to be like, I don't know, I think the conservatorship was a good idea and that Joe did a great job. And I understand that, like, maybe for that point in time, she couldn't be around her kids. If she's like drunk, erratically driving, and listen, if you're in a bad time, I get that maybe for a couple of weeks you should meet with your kids. But the idea that for the next 15 years, you need somebody standing in and doing your multi-million-dollar deals.
If you can do multi-million-dollar deals, then you don't need.
Can I say actually the reverse? I would almost argue first. If you can't handle signing for multi-billion-dollar deals, then you can't live up to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I agree. It just gets so sad because the thing is, I do think that him and Jamie Lynn have a point that there are certain actions that Britney could probably take more responsibility for. However, she's already been so disproportionately punished for them. I get why she can never climb out of it. Like, I get why she's like, what do you mean you want me to take responsibility for my own actions? I did. I lived 14 years of punishment.
And I also think because what they've done to try to not help her, but to try to like prop her back up and send her back out on stage is like when she says, I don't trust therapists anymore. I go, there is actually no way out of this because I think she has every right to say, I don't trust a therapist. I don't want to be on a medication. They put me on lithium against my will, tied to a chair. And he keeps saying things like, well, if what she says is true and she sees that as a trauma, it's her right to see that as a trauma. That's traumatic.
Yeah.
And I think like, if she says, I never want to get back on that shit again, of course, who am I? But unfortunately, I think she does need some help. But I understand that all versions of help have only hurt her. And so she's like help resistant.
Exactly. And it is this really complicated thing where I'm like, I don't understand how she is expected to mind everyone else's feelings while not a single person has ever given a shit about her. The way that Jamie Lynn is sitting there being like, why won't she take responsibility for the ways she hurt me? And it's like, well, you have not for one fucking second considered her perspective.
So he says, I thought Jamie, the father's hard-nosed approach was exactly what Britney needed. Yeah, that's what a woman having a postpartum meltdown needs. Hard-nosed discipline and business acumen.
Hard-nosed discipline from the person that you got a restraining order against 2 years later.
That went to rehab because he was an alcoholic who hit your kid. That's who needed to be in charge. Somebody with some sense. He wasn't the type to sugarcoat things, and given how out of control her life had become, structure was critical. Nobody ever says like care and compassion.
They now have joint custody over the kids, and when they go to Britney's house, they are coming back with stories. He believes that the kids are not, they're very resistant to spending time with Britney. And the problem is, it seems like things were pretty fucked up over there because she was being drugged and abused.
Yeah.
It is hard because I'm like, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't sound like a safe environment for children, but like, why won't anyone help her?
He goes, if Britney believed she was being held against her will and everything else she's shared since, then that trauma is real for her. And you can't ignore that. But he thinks the Free Britney movement like doesn't understand how crazy she was and how much she needed the help. I guess the thing is, as you've said, he doesn't understand mental illness. Listen, if it was 30 years ago, I guess he'd lock her to a radiator in a straitjacket. He'd put her in a circus show. Like, that's not how you help people who are struggling.
Britney never reached the first step of recovery, admitting that there was a problem. And that's, I guess, what I just said. But the problem is there was no care. There was no compassion. She was only punished. And so for her to sit there and be like, oh, you're right. Oh my God, I didn't realize that 14 years of torture, you guys were just trying to help me because I was the problem. Like, what do you want her to say?
Listen to what he says here. I wanted to kill him. I mean, hey, I get it. Addiction and mental health issues don't just appear out of nowhere. They build up, sometimes slowly, sometimes fast. And when they hit hard. For her, it was like flipping a switch. The person I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. And as much as I tried to understand, it didn't change the fact that her choices, no matter what the reasons for them, were affecting our kids. Okay.
Her choices.
To be like, hey, I get it. Addiction, mental health issues are tough. I'm not going to help you.
Why'd you choose to have them then? If addiction's so hard, why'd you pick it?
Anyway, the pressure of her addiction issues really meant that I had to go out and just let myself do tons of cocaine pretty often. What happened to my other 2 kids? I haven't seen them in years, but she is a really bad mother who should mostly just keep working and not get to use her own kitchen.
So then he meets Vic, a volleyball coach, and she's so cool.
So they did this crazy thing where like
he explains Vic's perspective on meeting Britney, how Vic was like, wow, you're such a good man. She's so psycho.
Something weird is that Britney goes on tour, and so they figure out this like convoluted way to let her see the boys where like he'll come out and rent a house and live there near her. And I am like, yeah, this does sound convoluted. There's something where I'm like, either she's adult enough to understand why that doesn't work, or she wants to be with her children over work, or she's not. Do you know what I mean? They're acting like all of these back end deals they're doing to keep Britney happy is so crazy on her, as opposed to them, who's like, if it's so crazy, then say no, we're not doing that. Then you can just skip the tour.
Well, where his like whole scheme slips a little bit is when he's saying the only way they could get her to do the tour is, and it's like, yeah, you were forcing her to tour.
She wanted to be home and see her children. You insisted that she toured in order to see her children. Like, as we now know from sources, everything was done with the threat of you won't get to see your babies. So I'm sure they were like, if you don't work, then we won't like let you see your babies. And then she goes, well, how will I see my babies if I work? And so they come up with this whole thing, and it's what they wanted. Then he talks about how Vic like was so selfless because she had a promising career and she gave it all up so that he could be Britney's like baby daddy or something.
Yeah, she was going to be like a women's volleyball commentator on Fox Sports. The thing that's so frustrating is this narrative that Britney is so hyper controlling and like insists upon signing a deal for a new record or signing a deal for a new tour, or like doing all these things. Like she wants to work. She wants to work. It's all under the guise of like, she wanted this. And so now in order for us to help her make it happen, we had to upset her. And like, she either is in control and is leading her career, or she is deeply out of control and you guys are making her like, do you know what I mean? There's this bonkers back and forth about like what she's making them do and what they're doing in order to keep her happy so that she'll do the things that they want.
Yeah.
Which one is it? Are you keeping her happy so that she will go on tour and continue to make you money? Or is she insisting upon going on tour?
In which case, if you're the hard-nosed, disciplined guy who recognizes it's too much, then tell her no. So then he's like, I kept my head down. He talks about his pathetic little life choices. He does Celebrity Fit Club, where he's like, they try to get me to be dramatic, but that's not me. I'm just a chill guy. And then they wanted him to be the host for Dance with the Stars. He says no. He's an idiot. He loses the weight. And then he has to do another dieting show, and he loses the weight again in Australia.
It's so crazy that he's like, all that mattered to me was like being near my family. So Vic is 3 months postpartum with their second child, I believe.
Postpartum?
Or no, but when they left for Australia, sorry.
Yeah, but he got the news the day she gave birth, and she's like there with their newborn, and he's like, guess what? We're moving to Australia.
Yeah.
She's like, placenta not even out yet. He's taking business calls.
No, they flew to Australia with a 3-month-old.
Which, of course, they had to leave the boys behind. One thing about him is when he doesn't feel like working, he can't leave his children. But when the minute a job opportunity comes up that allows him to abandon his children, he's like, peace out, bitches. So they have a baby. Then he proposes to her, and he's like, looking back, I wish I had invited any of my children to the wedding. That was kind of crazy. And I was like, yeah.
Work slowed down on its own, but I wasn't chasing it either. I'd still mess around with music here and there, but I wasn't trying to release anything. But it wasn't for lack of material. Shut up.
So then he keeps just like airing gossip about Britney and behind the scenes. This is during her Vegas residency when she famously like didn't say anything and then gets called off because her dad goes to the hospital. Behind the scenes, though, it was clear Britney was on a downward spiral. This is when she says she was sent to that facility where they like drugged her against her will. And he's like, I don't know what was happening there, but she probably needed it. Like, he's such a hater. The boys don't want to hang out with Britney anymore. They say she's acting weird and they feel uncomfortable. They have a lot of anxiety. I tried to explain the conservatorship to them, including how she could have petitioned to end it if she felt ready to take control of her life.
Fuck you.
That it lasted for 13 years was a reflection of her struggles. For years, she placed blame on everyone but herself. Me, her father, her team. The boys grew up hearing this and it left them confused and frustrated. They didn't want to pick sides or be caught in the middle, but they felt like they had no choice. They loved their mom and they couldn't deal with the environment she created. So then they stopped seeing each other. He goes, you know, things got worse for her, but she pushed away everyone who cared about her. Assistants, managers, security.
What do you mean everyone who cared about her and then you list a bunch of employees?
And then he's kind of like, listen, all these free Britney movement people are only making things worse. Things are worse now that she's free. She should have never gotten out of the conservatorship. He goes, if you really want to help her, you need to like change your tune. The truth is that this situation with Britney feels like it's reaching towards something irreversible. The signs are all there. It's impossible to pretend everything's okay.
So his final plea in this book is for Britney to get help again, basically. He feels that she's spiraling. And the problem is, at this point, the children are over 18.
Let them.
It's hard because, you know, you look at her social media and you go, yeah, I don't think that that's like someone who's A-okay.
She's not dangerous to society. She's allowed to do what she wants. But then he like goes on to talk about like my family dynamic wasn't perfect, but it was great. Hers was crazy. And then he goes through and talks about how
he
everyone
talks about how Jamie's an alcoholic and
but also such a great conservator, but also how he like shook the boys and like broke down a door. So he did a restraining order.
And he's always had anger issues and like reactivity and all these problems where I'm like, oh, and do you think that that might be the fucking dad Britney grew up with?
Eventually, I had to file a restraining order against Jamie myself. It wasn't just one incident, the culmination of everything that had been building between the boys and their mom for years. It is so crazy to say that Jamie is so great, but, you know, not safe to be around.
The person I give the most respect to is Jamie Lynn. She had her own life, her own challenges, and her own take on this whole mess. Shut the fuck up. That opportunistic little bitch. She talks about how Jamie Lynn was so impressive, how she created a career for herself at 13 years old, as if.
I don't think Lynn is the villain in any of this. She's been caught in the middle between loving her daughter and surviving her daughter. When things blew up in public, you could see it crush her. From my perspective, Lynn's just a mom trying to hold it all together. And then the epilogue is like, anyway, I have 2 more kids. The goal of a lifetime has been figuring out
how to make sure they all know each other.
2 of them don't really talk to me, but hey. Anyway, I hate that man so much. This book really upset me. I really felt like so cruel to her. I would have rathered it be like needlessly self-obsessed and that like he's telling us about his own shit, but really it was just like an attack on her.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of this book was to say, actually, I'm a good guy because I, abandoned Britney Spears in her time of need and am on the side of everyone who's tried to exploit her. Congratulations. This narrative of like she needs to take responsibility for her actions is truly one of the more evil and psychotic perspectives. And now we've had to read it twice.
I mean, one of the more incredible things I've ever seen is at the beginning when he was talking about how Char was pregnant. And I kept going, when was that baby born? I feel like he doesn't even, and then because he's like talking about meeting Britney and stuff. And I'm like, oh, the baby hasn't even been born yet.
Yeah. I mean, afterwards, when he goes through his kids, his first child is 23, his second child is 21. Then you get to his kids with Britney, who are 20 and 19. Then you get to his kids with Vic, who are 14 and 11, I think. So the first 4, it was 4 and 4 years.
Barely.
Yeah, barely. But with 2 different women.
Anyway, what a disgusting, pathetic loser man.